does raise an interesting point. People tend to ask about the cost of unconventional oil. As a general rule, if you were to ask if you were to sit down Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, and say, on average, what do we expect to pay to produce unconventional oil? What's the going forward amount of money we expect to spend? The general rule is between $75,000 and $125,000 US dollars per barrel day. What that means is if you want to produce 10,000 barrels per day, you're talking about somewhere between 750 million and 1.25 billion. So these things, I mean, like them or lump them, I think they're here to stay, to be completely honest with you, simply because I think we need the oil. But I think we all acknowledge they come at a significant cost. Not just the economic cost. I mean, you've pointed out something, which is these aren't that cheap. But the other thing is, from a CO2 emission standpoint, many of these things are actually significantly worse than what we're doing today. From a contamination standpoint, obviously the big knock that people have on shale gas is that it does disrupt, or at least is reported to disrupt, the water supply. Tar sands are obviously very dirty, unfortunately. You're literally melting the tar sands to get the oil out of it, which is not just generating a significant amount of CO2, but also general polluting. And then, of course, we're all familiar with these disasters that have occurred from time to time, such as the Deepwater Horizon. So how do we address the left side of the circle? Well, that gets us to our energy inflection point. I'm going to take one more moment to reiterate this point because it's so important. Sometimes it's just easier to look at what is and what isn't to get a sense of it. On the left here are a bunch of things that are technology ready, some of which we've already talked about. Deepwater drilling, tar sands, oil shale drilling, using corn or sugar to make ethanol, using soy or rapeseed to make biodiesel, generating power from wind, or using conventional geothermal. These are all things that are ready. Now, they have their pros and cons, and they all have scale limitations, some more than others, but they're ready. In other words, if you decided tomorrow you wanted to go and start building more of those, there's a blueprint. These are things that are not yet technology ready. So oil shale production in situ, which is just a fancy way of saying you heat the rock up, you put something in the rock to heat it up, which renders it easier to get the oil out. Carbon capture and sequestration. This is a way that we'd like to burn fossil fuels, but without the deleterious side effects of creating CO2, so we capture that and sequester it. Grid energy storage, which would allow us to potentially generate electricity during peak time, during base times, store it, and then regenerate it for peak. Cellulosic fuels, and this could be both on the ethanol side or on the hydrocarbon side. These are fuels that you make out of biomass that is cellulosic, meaning from a structural standpoint, it's not the sugar content of the plant, it's the non-sugar, non-energy part. Algae oils, this is something that our company is working on. As Nate said, we take a photosynthetic plant, we feed it carbon dioxide and sunlight, and lo and behold, we get hydrocarbons. Oceanic power and enhanced geothermal. Again, these are not ready. You can't go out and build these yet today at scale.